Top 1. The Piri-Reis Map. The year is 1513. You're sitting in a lamplit room in Constantinople, the Bosphorus gleaming outside your window. Before you on your work table lies a piece of gazelle skin parchment, and you've just finished drawing something that shouldn't be possible. The coastline of South America curves across the leather in confident lines. The western edge of Africa sits in perfect proportion. And there, at the bottom of the world, you've drawn the northern coast of Antarctica. The problem? That frozen continent won't be officially discovered for another 307 years. This is the Piri-Reis map, and it was found by accident. In 1929, a German theologian named Gustav Adolf Deissmann was cataloging documents during renovations at Istanbul's Topkapi Palace when he came across a rolled fragment of gazelle skin. The map was dated to the Islamic year 919, equivalent to 1513 CE, and signed by Admiral Piri-Reis of the Ottoman Imperial Navy. Piri-Reis left detailed notes on the map itself, explaining that he had compiled it from approximately 20 source charts, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. He specifically mentioned using a map that had belonged to Christopher Columbus. What made historians pause wasn't the age, it was the accuracy. The map shows the Atlantic Ocean, the coasts of South America and West Africa, and a landmass at the bottom that appears to be Antarctica. But here's where it gets strange. The Antarctic coastline shown on the Piri-Reis map matches the subglacial topography of Queen Maud Land, terrain that lies hidden beneath a mile-thick ice sheet. That coastline hasn't been visible for approximately 6,000 years, since before the end of the last ice age. In 1960, the United States Air Force became involved. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer, a cartographer with the Air Force, compared the Piri-Reis map to seismic data collected during the 1949 Byrd Antarctic expedition. His conclusion was documented in an official letter. The Antarctic portion of the map, he wrote, showed coastline features that matched the 1949 seismic profile with remarkable accuracy. Ohlmeyer himself stated that the Air Force had no idea how the data on the map could be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. When the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the U.S. Navy Hydrographic Office conducted their own analysis, they found a correlation coefficient of 0.98 between the Piri-Reis Antarctica and modern surveys. That's nearly perfect. The longitude accuracy is equally baffling. The South American coastline is positioned with a precision that European cartographers wouldn't achieve until the 18th century, after the invention of the marine chronometer solved the longitude problem. Yet here it is, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral who never sailed to South America. Mainstream historians offer a straightforward explanation. The Antarctic portion, they argue, is actually the South American coast, distorted and extended southward. It's a case of mistaken identity, they say, compounded by selective interpretation from believers who ignore errors elsewhere on the map while highlighting features that seem to match. Piri-Reis was simply copying and combining the best Portuguese and Spanish charts available from the early age of exploration. The resemblance to subglacial Antarctica is coincidence, pattern matching where none exists. But the geometry doesn't support this. When the map is properly projected using period-appropriate mathematical techniques, the coastline's orientation doesn't match South America. The river mouths, the mountain ranges, the coastal indentations align not with the continent above it, but with Queen Maud Land beneath its ice. The 1960 Air Force analysis wasn't conducted by fringe theorists or amateur enthusiasts. These were military cartographers with security clearances, analyzing the map as a technical problem. They had no ideological reason to validate an alternative history. They were simply reporting what the data showed. So where did Piri-Reis get his information? His own notes point to ancient sources, charts supposedly from Alexander's time or earlier. Some researchers, including Charles Hapgood, who published maps of the ancient sea kings in 1966, suggest the map was copied from much older source material created by an advanced maritime civilization during the last ice age, when Antarctica's coast was ice-free. Others propose a lost global mapping project, possibly Phoenician or earlier, whose charts survived through ancient libraries like Alexandria before fragmenting into medieval European and Islamic cartography. The questions multiply faster than the answers. How did cartographers achieve modern-level accuracy 3 centuries before the chronometer solved longitude? If the Antarctic coast is misidentified South America, why did U.S. military analysts find it matched Queen Maud Land? And what happened to those 20 source maps Piri Reis claimed to have used? Not one has ever been found. Top 2. The Orans-Phineas map. If one map showing an ice-free Antarctica seems impossible, prepare yourself because 18 years later, a French mathematician drew a second one, the Orans-Phineas map, 1531. Paris, your Orans fine, royal mathematician to King Francis I, professor at the College Royal, and you're about to publish a world map that will haunt cartographers for centuries. You've chosen an elegant heart-shaped projection, a double cordiform that splits the world into 2 lobes. The known continents spread across the parchment in careful detail. But at the bottom of your map, centered on the South Pole, you've drawn an entire continent. Mountains rise from its interior. Rivers flow from highlands to coast. Bays indent the shoreline. You've drawn Antarctica as if the ice weren't there. The map was created by Orans Fine, whose Latinized name was Orontius Phineas. He wasn't a speculative dreamer. He was a serious mathematician who calculated longitude and latitude, designed scientific instruments, and published precise astronomical tables. His map is now housed in the Library of Congress, and it was largely forgotten until Captain Arlington Mallory and researcher Charles Hapgood rediscovered it in the 1960s while studying ancient cartography. What makes the Phineas map impossible is its accuracy. The Antarctic continent is shown at approximately 6,500 miles across. The actual width of Antarctica is 5,500 miles. For a 16th century scholar drawing a theoretical landmass that wouldn't be confirmed for 300 years, that's a remarkable estimate. But the precision goes deeper. The map depicts mountain ranges in roughly the correct position for the Transantarctic Mountains, a massive range that divides the continent into east and west. Those mountains weren't confirmed by expeditions until the 20th century. The map shows rivers flowing from the interior highlands down to the coast. This seemed like pure fantasy until the International Geophysical Year seismic surveys of 1957 and 1958 revealed subglacial river valleys in similar positions beneath the ice. The map includes detailed coastal features, bays and inlets and estuaries that match the bedrock topography mapped by modern seismic reflection techniques. There's even a large indentation on one side that corresponds to the position of the Ross Sea and Ross Ice Shelf. Phineas didn't hide his methods. He was known to use ancient sources, and he worked during a period when Renaissance scholars were rediscovering and translating ancient texts that had been preserved in monasteries and Byzantine archives. The question is what sources he used and where he found them. When Hapgood published his analysis in Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, in 1966, he included testimony from U.S. Air Force cartographers who confirmed that features on the Phineas map matched seismic data from Antarctica. The standard explanation is that Antarctica was a theoretical construct. Ancient Greek scholars like Aristotle theorized about a southern landmass needed to balance the northern continents, a concept called terra australis incognita, the unknown southern land. Medieval and Renaissance cartographers inherited this idea and drew speculative southern continents on their maps. Phineas, according to this view, was simply illustrating an old theory. Any resemblance to the actual Antarctica is coincidental. The mountains and rivers are decorative elements, artistic flourishes, not genuine cartographic data. But Phineas wasn't drawing mythology. He was a mathematician who worked in specific coordinates. When his Antarctic continent is overlaid on a map of Antarctica using the projection mathematics of his era, the fit is disturbing. The interior features aren't random decoration. They correlate with subglacial geography in specific positions. If Phineas was guessing, he made millions of choices about where to place mountains, rivers, and bays. The odds of randomly placing them where they actually exist beneath the ice are astronomically small. Could Phineas have accessed the same ancient source network as Piri Reis? The two cartographers were separated by 18 years and roughly 1,000 miles, yet both produced Antarctic coastlines that matched subglacial reality. Some researchers suggest a cache of ancient maps, perhaps from the Library of Alexandria or Byzantine imperial archives, reached Renaissance Europe through Turkish and Italian intermediaries after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Others propose an even older origin, a pre-Ice Age maritime civilization that mapped the world before Antarctic glaciation accelerated 6,000 years ago. The real mystery isn't just that one mathematician drew Antarctica without ice. It's that multiple cartographers, working independently in different countries in different decades, all drew versions of the same impossible coastline. Top 3. The Philippe Boache map. In 1737, another French geographer would add one more piece to this puzzle, and his map would turn out to be right in a way that wouldn't be confirmed for 220 years. The Philippe Boache map, 1737. You stand before the French Royal Academy of Sciences in Paris, ready to present your newest work. Your Philippe Boache, Premier Géographe du Roi, the king's own geographer. And the map you're about to unveil will be dismissed as speculation. Your map shows Antarctica, not as one landmass, but as two separate islands divided by a sea channel running from one side of the continent to the other. Your colleagues think you're guessing. 221 years later, scientists will drill through 2 miles of ice and discover you were exactly right. Philippe Boache was born in 1700 and lived until 1773. He wasn't a fringe figure or an amateur enthusiast. He was a member of the Academy of Sciences and served as the first royal geographer of the French Academy. His map, titled Carte de Terre Australe, shows the Antarctic continent divided by a waterway. It was published and presented to the Academy in 1737, 83 years before Antarctica would be officially discovered by a Russian expedition in 1820. Here's what makes the Boache map impossible. It correctly shows Antarctica as two distinct landmasses separated by a channel running roughly from the Weddell Sea on one side to the Ross Sea on the other. This wasn't confirmed until the International Geophysical Year seismic studies of 1958 revealed that the Transantarctic mountain range divides the continent and that below the ice sheet, a channel of bedrock sitting below sea level connects the two seas. Modern bedrock elevation maps, including the comprehensive BedMap 2 project published in 2013, confirm what Boache drew in 1737. West Antarctica is indeed separated from East Antarctica by a below sea level channel. If you remove the ice, you'd have two islands. Boache stated that his map was compiled from various ancient sources in Spanish reports, but he never specified which sources or how he obtained them. He used a stereographic polar projection with surprising accuracy for both longitude and latitude. The map was noted by contemporary scholars, but largely ignored as speculation. For the next 2 centuries, geographers assumed Antarctica was a single solid landmass. It took seismic technology to prove otherwise. The mainstream explanation is that Boache made an educated guess based on symmetry principles. If the Arctic had straits and channels and complicated geography, perhaps the Antarctic did too. The prediction was lucky coincidence. He may have been influenced by earlier theoretical maps showing Terra Australis with various speculative features. The divisions shown on his map could reference secondhand reports from French expeditions to the southern oceans that glimpsed icebergs and ice sheets from a distance and made assumptions about what lay beyond. But Boache wasn't guessing about generalized features. He drew a specific channel in a specific location, and it matches reality. The probability of randomly placing a dividing waterway exactly where it exists beneath miles of accumulated ice is extraordinarily low. If he was just applying symmetry principles or making aesthetic choices, why does the channel appear where it actually is and not somewhere else? Even more curious, Boache claimed ancient sources. In 18th century academic French, this wasn't a vague phrase. It meant genuine old maps, documented historical charts, not modern exploration data. Where did those sources come from? Some researchers suggest Boache may have accessed Portuguese or Spanish charts that were not publicly available, compiled from much older sources held in monastery collections. The Portuguese and Spanish were notoriously secretive about their navigation data, keeping detailed charts classified as state secrets. Could some of those secret charts have derived from Phoenician or Carthaginian mariners who reached Antarctic waters during warmer periods and charted coastlines? Others point to the map as evidence of a sophisticated pre-Ice Age mapping project, with fragments surviving through medieval Arabic and Byzantine archives before reaching European cartographers. The accuracy isn't luck. It's memory, preserved through copying and recopying, passed down through civilizations that rose and fell while the ice kept its secrets. Top 4. Mercator's Arctic Map. From the South Pole, we travel north to the opposite end of the Earth, where another impossible map shows a world that shouldn't exist. Mercator's Arctic Map, 1569. Duisburg, Holy Roman Empire. Your Gerardus Mercator, the greatest cartographer of the Renaissance, inventor of the map projection that will bear your name and revolutionize navigation for the next 5 centuries. You're drawing the top of the world, a place no European has successfully reached. And you're depicting something extraordinary. The North Pole isn't covered in ice. It's an open sea surrounding a massive black magnetic mountain. 4 rivers flow outward from the Central Sea, dividing the Arctic into 4 islands. You label the mountain Rupes Nigra, the Black Rock. You've never been there. No one you know has been there, but your sources insist it's real. The map appears as a polar inset on Mercator's famous 1569 world map. It's titled Septentrionalium Terrarum Descriptio, Description of the Northern Lands. Mercator was born in 1512 and died in 1594. He was the official cartographer to Holy Roman Emperor Charles the Moslem and the Duke of Cleves. This wasn't a man who trafficked in fantasy. He invented the mathematical projection system that's still used by GPS systems today. He was a pioneering researcher on magnetic declination and compass variation, doing serious scientific work on how compasses behaved in different locations. Yet his Arctic map shows detailed geography drawn with confidence, depicting islands, channels, and coastal features decades before any European reached the pole. At the center sits a massive rock formation, described in his notes as 33 miles in circumference and the source of magnetic attraction. A giant whirlpool supposedly surrounds it. 4 symmetrical channels flow outward from the Central Sea, creating 4 landmasses arranged in perfect geometric harmony. It echoes ancient cosmological descriptions, the 4 rivers flowing from paradise, the axis mundi at the center of the world. Mercator explicitly cited his source. He referenced a lost 14th century travel account called Inventio Fortunatae, supposedly written by an English monk describing a voyage to the North Pole. This text was real. Multiple medieval scholars, including the famous John Dee, referenced Inventio Fortunatae in their own work, but every single copy has vanished. Only Mercator's map preserves whatever geography that text described. The accuracy of the surrounding areas is what makes this truly strange. Greenland, Iceland, and northern Norway are depicted with remarkable precision for 1569. Arctic expeditions of the 17th through 19th centuries found only ice at the pole, but submarine studies in the 20th century confirmed that the Arctic basin bathymetry does include a deep central basin surrounded by submarine ridges, a structure that echoes, however faintly, what Mercator drew. The mainstream explanation is straightforward. The map represents medieval mythology, not geography. The 4 rivers and central mountain are cosmological symbols from religious tradition. The 4 rivers of Eden, the world mountain connecting heaven and earth. Inventio Fortunatae was likely fictional or grossly exaggerated. Mercator, despite his scientific credentials, was still a man of his time, influenced by medieval legend. When faced with unknown areas on his map, he filled them with speculation and symbolism. The accuracy of the surrounding coasts is overstated. They're recognizable but distorted. But Mercator didn't trade in mythology elsewhere in his work. He distinguished clearly between reliable data and legend in his other maps and writings. He was engaged in genuine scientific inquiry about magnetic north and compass behavior. Why would he confidently depict Arctic details citing a specific source unless that source contained compelling data? And those surrounding coasts, the ones that are supposedly just recognizable but distorted, match modern maps better than they should. It suggests Mercator had access to navigation data from undocumented voyages, expeditions that reached further north than official records admit. Could Inventio Fortunatae have preserved knowledge from earlier Arctic exploration? The Norse reached Iceland, Greenland, and Newfoundland. Their sagas describe voyages beyond documented settlements. Could some of them have pushed further into Arctic waters? Others suggest even earlier, Bronze Age maritime cultures may have explored northern regions. Some researchers propose that the ice-free polar sea reflects genuine ancient memory of the Holocene climatic optimum, a warm period from 9,000 to 5,000 years ago when Arctic ice coverage was significantly reduced. The magnetic mountain might reference genuine navigational landmarks or magnetic anomalies known to ancient mariners. What was in Inventio Fortunatae, and why did all copies vanish? How did Mercator achieve Arctic detail accuracy without documented exploration? Does his ice-free polar sea preserve memory of an ancient warmer period when such voyages were possible? Top 5. The Ahmed Map. The questions lead us across the world to the Pacific, where a 16th century Ottoman admiral somehow drew coastlines with accuracy that shouldn't have been achievable. The Ahmed Map, 1559. You're an Ottoman cartographer named Ahmed working in your studio somewhere in the vast Ottoman Empire. You've never sailed the Pacific Ocean. No Ottoman ship has. The empire's naval power is concentrated in the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Red Sea. European explorers only crossed the Pacific 37 years ago, and their maps are jealously guarded state secrets. Yet you're drawing the Pacific coastlines right now, the western edge of the Americas from Alaska down through California to Chile, the eastern shores of China and Japan, islands scattered across the vast ocean between. You're drawing them with an accuracy that will take European surveyors 3 more centuries to match. The Ahmed World Map was created in 1559 and is held in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul, stored alongside the Piri Reis map. It was rediscovered by modern researchers studying Ottoman cartography in the 20th century. What makes it impossible is that it shows the Pacific theater in remarkable detail at a time when Europeans had barely begun exploring that ocean, and the Ottoman Empire had zero presence in Pacific waters. The Pacific was first crossed by Europeans in 1521, when Magellan's expedition limped across it, losing most of his ships and crew. Balboa had first sighted it from Panama in 1513, just 46 years before Ahmed's map. Yet the map shows the Pacific coastlines of the Americas and Asia, with longitude accuracy that European cartographers wouldn't achieve until James Cook's voyages with Harrison's chronometer in 1768, 209 years later. The map shows California, Baja California, and the Pacific Northwest with detail that doesn't appear in Spanish charts until the Vizcaíno expedition of 1602, 43 years after Ahmed drew it. The Alaskan coastline resembles actual Alaskan geography. Alaska wasn't officially explored by Europeans until Vitus Bering's expedition in 1741, 182 years after this map. The coastlines of Japan, China, and Southeast Asia are shown with precision that Europeans struggled to achieve even after decades of trade and exploration. Pacific islands and archipelagos appear in approximately correct positions. There's no documentation of how Ahmed acquired the specific data. The Ottoman Empire had no Pacific fleet, no exploration program in that ocean, no official presence anywhere near those waters. Ottoman power and influence were focused westward and southward, not eastward across the vast Asian landmass, and certainly not across the Pacific. The mainstream explanation relies on espionage and trade networks. Ahmed, they argue, compiled data from Portuguese and Spanish charts that circulated secretly despite official efforts to guard them. Ottoman intelligence networks were sophisticated. They debriefed captured sailors, acquired stolen maps, maintained extensive trade contacts. Fragmentary data from multiple sources could have allowed Ahmed to create a composite chart. The accuracy, according to this view, is exaggerated by selective analysis that highlights correct features while ignoring errors. But Portuguese and Spanish Pacific charts from the 1550s were primitive. Even Spanish pilots who'd sailed those routes for decades couldn't accurately chart the coast. Longitude was still an unsolved problem. How did an Ottoman cartographer with no Pacific access produce coastlines that match modern surveys better than the actual explorers' maps? The longitude accuracy alone is baffling. Solving the longitude problem required Harrison's marine chronometer in 1761, 202 years after Ahmed's map. Without accurate longitude, you can't position coastlines correctly relative to each other. Yet Ahmed did. Could Ahmed have accessed much older charts from a forgotten mapping tradition? Chinese maritime exploration is one possibility. Admiral Zheng He's treasure fleet, voyages from 1405 to 1433, reached Southeast Asia, India, and East Africa. Some researchers argue they may have reached further. Did Chinese Pacific charts exist later acquired by the Ottomans through Silk Road trade networks? Polynesian navigators crossed vast Pacific distances for millennia using sophisticated wayfinding techniques passed down through generations. Could their knowledge have been recorded on charts that filtered to the Old World? Most provocatively, did ancient maritime civilizations map the Pacific millennia before Europeans, with fragments surviving in Ottoman archives? Top 6. The Cantino Planisphere. These questions lead us to an act of espionage because sometimes the most revealing thing about impossible knowledge is when powerful people risk everything to steal it. The Cantino Planisphere. October 15, 1502. Lisbon, Portugal. You're Alberto Cantino, an agent of the Duke of Ferrara, and you're about to commit an act of espionage that could get you executed. You've spent months in the Portuguese court observing, bribing, waiting. Tonight you finally have it. A secret cartography workshop in the Royal Palace complex has produced a copy of Portugal's most protected secret, a map showing the entire known world, including coastlines that officially haven't been discovered yet. You roll it up as quietly as possible, your heart pounding. If the guards catch you smuggling this out hidden in cloth, it's over. But what you're carrying will prove something extraordinary. Someone knew this world before Europe claims to have discovered it. The map was commissioned by Alberto Cantino, working as a spy for Duke Ercole, the first D'Este of Ferrara, Italy. It was created by anonymous Portuguese cartographers in 1502. Cantino successfully smuggled it to Italy, and it survived in the Estense family collection for centuries. It's now housed in the Biblioteca Estense in Modena, Italy. It's the oldest surviving Portuguese nautical chart showing post-Columbian discoveries, and it's impossibly accurate. The map shows the full Brazilian coastline with detailed features. Brazil was officially discovered by Cabral in 1500, only 2 years before this map was created. Yet the coastline extends thousands of miles with geographic precision, suggesting decades more exploration than actually occurred. The map shows Brazil's coast from approximately 1 degree north latitude to 35 degrees south. Portuguese records show official exploration had only reached 28 degrees south by 1502. Who mapped the rest? The African coast is shown from the Mediterranean all the way around the Cape of Good Hope and up the east coast, with accuracy matching Vasco da Gama's voyage data from 1497 to 1499, but exceeding what was officially published. The Caribbean islands are depicted in detail. The Indian Ocean coastlines, including India and Ceylon, are rendered with remarkable precision for such an early date. The longitude is surprisingly correct for an era without chronometers. The map prominently shows the line of Tordesillas, the boundary established by the 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas, dividing the world between Spain and Portugal. This demonstrates that the map wasn't just geographical, but geopolitical, showing territorial claims and strategic information. Italian diplomatic correspondence confirms Cantino's mission to steal Portuguese cartographic secrets. The map cost 12 gold ducati, an enormous sum. Portugal guarded navigation data under penalty of death. Pilots required security clearances. Maps were classified state secrets. The Portuguese crown understood that whoever controlled the maps controlled exploration, trade, and colonial expansion. When King Manuel learned of the theft, his fury was documented. The question is why? If the map simply showed 2 years of Brazilian coastal surveys, why the extreme reaction? What information on this map was worth killing to protect? The mainstream explanation is straightforward. The map represents cutting-edge European exploration as of 1502, compiled from Portuguese pilot reports, Spanish Caribbean data, and existing Mediterranean portolan charts. The Brazilian coast shown is consistent with expeditions that occurred but weren't publicly documented immediately. Portuguese exploration from 1497 to 1502 was intensive. The accuracy reflects concentrated effort, not impossible knowledge. The longitude accuracy is overstated, they argue. Projection distortions make modern comparisons misleading. But Portuguese records show only limited coastal voyages by 1502. They hadn't completed surveys of southern Brazil's full coast, yet the map shows it. The longitude placement of Brazil, Africa, and India is more correct than it should be without chronometers. King Manuel's fury when he learned of the theft suggests the map contained information more valuable than a few years of exploration data. What was on this map that was worth the extreme secrecy? The Cantino planisphere might reveal that Portuguese and Spanish exploration was far more advanced than publicly acknowledged. They may have been secretly mapping coastlines years before official discoveries to maintain competitive advantages over rival powers. Top 7. The Waldseemüller Map. Stolen maps reveal what empires wanted hidden. But some maps reveal something stranger, knowledge that shouldn't exist at all. The Waldseemüller Map, April 25, 1507. The village of Saint-Die in the Duchy of Lorraine, nestled in the Vosges Mountains. You're about to publish a world map that will literally change history. You're Martin Waldseemüller, German cartographer working with a small scholarly academy, and you've made a decision. You're naming a continent America for the first time, honoring the explorer Amerigo Vespucci. The map will be printed in 1,000 copies and distributed across Europe. But there's something impossible on your map that no one seems to notice at first. You've drawn the Pacific Ocean 6 years before Balboa will officially cite it. You've shown South America as a separate continent, distinct from Asia. You've depicted geography that won't be discovered for years. How did you know? The map was created by Martin Waldseemüller, who lived from 1470 to 1520. It was commissioned by Duke René II of Lorraine and printed at the Gymnase Vosgien Academy in Saint-Die. It's a 12-panel woodcut map measuring approximately 4 1/2 feet by 8 feet when assembled. 1,000 copies were printed, but only one survived. It was discovered in a German castle in 1901 and purchased by the Library of Congress in 2003 for $10 million, the highest price ever paid for a historical document at that time. This is the first map to use the name America. It's the first map to show America as a separate continent distinct from Asia. Most impossibly, it depicts the Pacific Ocean as a large body of water separating America from Asia. The Pacific wasn't officially discovered by Europeans until Balboa reached it in 1513, 6 years after this map was published. Magellan didn't cross it until 1521, 14 years later. Yet Waldseemüller drew it in 1507. The map shows South America with a western coastline despite no European having sailed along that coast by 1507. The shape of the continent suggests foreknowledge of its complete outline. The Pacific Ocean is shown at approximately the correct size relative to the Atlantic and the land masses on either side. This wasn't a small decorative detail, it was a fundamental geographic statement. Waldseemüller was declaring that a vast ocean separated the New World from Asia. Waldseemüller cited Vespucci's letters and the ancient geographer Ptolemy as his sources, but neither contained information about the Pacific. He was a respected scholar who had studied under major cartographic authorities. The map was produced as an authoritative reference work, not speculation. Here's where it gets stranger. In 1513, when Waldseemüller reprinted the map in a new edition, he removed the name America and altered the Pacific depiction, almost as if he'd been told to retract information that was too revealing. What changed his mind? The mainstream explanation is that Waldseemüller was speculating based on reasoning. By 1507, educated people knew Earth was round. Columbus and Vespucci had reached what appeared to be a new world. Logic suggested that if Earth was spherical and this was a new continent, then another ocean probably separated it from Asia. The western coastline of South America shown on the map is imaginative conjecture, not data. The Pacific is hypothetical space filling. The accuracy is exaggerated. Critics argue that many features on the map are wrong, and believers cherry-pick the correct elements. Vespucci's letters contain suggestions of a new continent, and Waldseemüller simply extrapolated. But Waldseemüller wasn't drawing fantasy. He was a trained cartographer, working with a scholarly academy. The map was produced as a serious work of geographical science. The proportions of the Pacific are remarkably close to reality. If he was guessing, why did he guess right? And why did he remove the name America and alter the Pacific depiction in later editions? What information became too sensitive to publish? Some researchers suggest Waldseemüller had access to undocumented Portuguese or Spanish charts showing Pacific voyages predating official records. Top 8. The Cognito Map. From a German scholar's study, we traveled to the far side of the world where a medieval Korean map proved that advanced cartography wasn't a European achievement. It was a global legacy. The Cognito Map, 1402, the third year of King Taizong's reign in the Joseon dynasty. You're working in the Royal Bureau of Astronomy and Cartography in what will one day be called Seoul. You're a scholar, an astronomer, and you've just completed a world map for the royal court. Korea is shown in meticulous detail. That makes sense. It's your homeland. China and Japan are depicted with careful accuracy, expected given centuries of contact, but you've also drawn India, the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. And Africa's shape on your map, its elongated form tapering toward the south, matches reality better than any European map will for another 100 years. Your kingdom has never sent ships to Africa. You've never met a European. Yet there it is. The Cognito Map was created by Korean astronomers and cartographers Yi Ho and Kwon Kun in 1402. The original is lost, but two 15th century copies survive. One at Ryukoku University in Japan, and another at Honkoji Temple, also in Japan. The map was based on Chinese, Korean, and Japanese sources. It's the oldest known Korean map to show Africa, Europe, and Arabia. Here's what shouldn't be possible. The map shows the African continent with remarkably accurate shape and proportions. Africa is depicted as elongated north to south, with correct tapering at the southern end. This accuracy comes 93 years before the Portuguese rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488 and decades before European maps showed the accurate African coast. The map depicts Europe and the Mediterranean with surprising accuracy despite Korea having no documented contact with European exploration. The proportionate width to height ratio of Africa matches reality. The map's preface clearly states it was compiled from Chinese, Japanese, and Islamic sources. Korean maritime history shows no voyages to Africa, Europe, or the Indian Ocean during this period. Modern cartographic analysis shows Africa's proportions are closer to reality than European Ptolemaic maps of the same era. The map was created by royal scholars with access to the Joseon dynasty's extensive library and Chinese scholarly networks, built over centuries of cultural exchange. The mainstream explanation relies on transmission of knowledge. The map represents a compilation of Islamic and Chinese geographical knowledge transmitted via Silk Road trade networks. Islamic cartographers had explored and mapped Africa's east coast through maritime trade routes. Chinese travelers reached India and the Middle East via the Silk Road. This knowledge was shared through merchant and scholarly networks that connected the Islamic world, China, and Korea. The accuracy, according to this view, is overstated. Many features are distorted or symbolic rather than precisely measured. Korean cartographers were synthesizing second-hand accounts from travelers' tales and existing maps, not primary exploration data. But here's the problem. Islamic maps of the 15th century don't show Africa with this level of accuracy. They show northern Africa well, the regions they'd explored and traded with for centuries, but they distort sub-Saharan regions, making the continent too wide or misshaping the southern portions. Chinese maps of the era are even less accurate for Africa. The Cognito isn't just copying inferior sources, it's showing Africa better than the supposed original sources show it. Top 9, the Xenomap. If the Cognito proves ancient knowledge circulated globally across cultures, then the next map forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility, that history's timeline might have been carefully edited to protect a more convenient story. The Xenomap, 1558. Venice, you're Niccolò Zeno the Younger, and you're about to publish something that will make you either famous or infamous. You found letters and a map in your family's archives, documents supposedly written by your ancestors. Niccolò and Antonio Zeno, describing a voyage they made to the far North Atlantic in the 1390s, a full century before Columbus. The map shows Greenland, Iceland, the Faroe Islands. It shows mysterious lands called Estadaland and Frisland, places that seem to match North America and phantom islands that will appear on maps for the next 200 years. If it's authentic, Your ancestors crossed the Atlantic 100 years before Columbus, proving the official history of discovery is incomplete. The map was published by Niccolo Zeno the Younger in 1558, claiming to reproduce documents from his ancestors who allegedly sailed the North Atlantic in the 1390s. It shows Greenland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, and a mysterious island called Friesland, positioned between Iceland and Greenland. It describes another land called Estadaland to the west, which some identify as North America. The map has been controversial since publication. Some scholars call it an elaborate hoax. Others defend its authenticity or argue it contains genuine information mixed with errors and embellishments. If authentic, the map represents pre-Columbian Norse or Venetian knowledge of the North Atlantic and possibly North America. The depiction of Greenland and Iceland contains accurate features not present in other contemporary European maps. Friesland appears nowhere in reality, yet it was incorporated into maps by major cartographers, including Mercator and Ortelius, for the next 200 years. They took it seriously. The Estadaland accounts describe a land west of Greenland with temperate climate, European-style buildings, and Latin books. This description matches Norse settlements in Newfoundland, confirmed archaeologically at Lonceau Meadows in 1960. The Zeno family was a prominent Venetian dynasty with documented naval service. They had access to navigation records and participated in Mediterranean naval campaigns. Venetian naval activity in the North Atlantic is documented through trade connections with England and Northern Europe. Some researchers suggest glass fragments found at Lonceau Meadows indicate medieval European contact beyond the Norse. The mainstream explanation is fraud. The Zeno map is a 16th century fabrication, possibly created by Niccolo the Younger to glorify his family history and elevate their status. Friesland is pure invention. No such island exists. The accurate Greenland features were simply copied from recent Portuguese or Danish maps that Zeno had access to. The story of the 1390s voyage is fiction, perhaps inspired by Norse sagas that circulated in Europe. The map's influence on later cartographers simply demonstrates that even professionals can be fooled by convincing hoaxes. Many features on the map don't match reality, and the narrative contains fantastical elements characteristic of medieval travel tales. But if it's a simple hoax designed to fool common readers, why did professional cartographers like Mercator and Ortelius incorporate its data into their own maps? They had access to the best geographical knowledge of the 16th century. Top 10. The Ephra Mauro Map. From contested Atlantic voyages, we return to where this investigation began, to the ancient world and the Mediterranean. Because the most impossible map of all might be one that claims its knowledge came from sources older than Rome itself. The Fra Mauro Map, 1450. The monastery island of Murano near Venice. You're Fra Mauro, a Camaldolese monk and professional cartographer. You've spent years creating a masterpiece, a circular map 6 ft and 4 in diameter, the most detailed world map of your era. But you've done something radical that makes other scholars uncomfortable. You've flipped the world upside down, placing south at the top, north at the bottom, not as a mistake or artistic whim, but as a statement. Because your sources, ancient Arabic texts, Chinese accounts, and Roman charts show the world from a different perspective than medieval Europe remembers. Fra Mauro died in 1464. He was a Venetian monk who ran a professional cartography workshop that served clients across Europe. The map was commissioned by King Afonso V of Portugal, which is significant. Portugal was actively exploring the African coast, and they wanted the best geographical knowledge available. The completed map from around 1450 and a copy made in 1453 survives in the Biblioteca Marciana in Venice. It represents a synthesis of Ptolemaic classical geography, Islamic scholarship, Chinese accounts, and medieval European knowledge. The map shows accurate Indian Ocean geography with the Indian subcontinent, Ceylon, Southeast Asia, and Indonesia, rendered with surprisingly accurate proportions and positions. The African coast extends all the way to the Cape of Good Hope 38 years before. Bartolomeo Diaz officially rounded it in 1488. The map contains one particularly explosive annotation. It describes a European ship sailing around Africa's south coast in 1420. If accurate, this predates Diaz by 68 years. Fra Mauro extensively cites his sources in over 3,000 textual annotations. He references ancient ones, Ptolemy, Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant Niccolo de Conti, and travelers from Ethiopia in the East. He argues that the Indian Ocean is not a landlocked sea, as Ptolemy believed, but is connected to the Atlantic. This was a revolutionary claim in 1450. The map depicts the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean with precision that reflects centuries of maritime experience. It includes detailed information about the Silk Road routes and the cities of the Mongol Empire. The mainstream explanation is that Fra Mauro was a brilliant synthesizer of available data. He combined the latest reports from Portuguese explorers with Islamic geographical knowledge and classical texts. The depiction of southern Africa was a logical deduction based on reports of a vast ocean to the south. The 1420 voyage might be a reference to a real but undocumented expedition or a misinterpretation of a traveler's account. The accuracy of the Indian Ocean reflects the high quality of Arab and Chinese charts that were circulating in the Mediterranean. Fra Mauro's genius lay in his ability to evaluate and integrate these diverse sources into a single coherent worldview. But the level of detail in regions Europeans hadn't visited suggests something more. Romans traded extensively with India via the Red Sea. Roman coins have been found in India, Vietnam, and possibly further east. This maritime knowledge could have survived in Arabic texts after the Islamic conquest, accessed by Venetian scholars through trade contacts. These 10 maps span from Constantinople to Korea, from Ottoman admirals to Venetian monks, from Antarctica's ice to the Arctic's magnetic pole. Each one whispers the same impossible message. Someone knew this world before we thought they did. 10 maps, 10 impossibilities. The Piri Reis map, showing Antarctica's coastline without ice, matching terrain not seen for 6,000 years. The Orontes Phineas map depicting the same ice-free continent with mountains and rivers in positions confirmed only by 20th century seismic surveys. Philippa Boace, correctly dividing Antarctica into two landmasses separated by a channel, proven right 221 years later. Mercator's Arctic map showing detailed polar geography, citing lost sources. Ahmed, drawing the Pacific with accuracy exceeding contemporary European explorers, despite the Ottoman Empire having no Pacific presence. The Cantino planisphere, stolen because it revealed too much too soon. Waldseemüller showing the Pacific Ocean 6 years before its official discovery and removing the depiction in later editions. The Kang-Nido proving advanced cartography transcended east-west boundaries. The controversial Zeno map influencing major cartographers for centuries. And Fra Mauro's masterpiece explicitly citing ancient sources and depicting voyages history books claim never happened. The pattern is undeniable. These aren't isolated anomalies scattered randomly across time and space. They're glimpses of something larger, something that challenges the linear narrative we've been taught about human progress and discovery. If these stories of impossible maps have changed the way you look at the history of our world, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are excavating the history they tried to bury. Plant the seeds of the future. The next treasury of secrets will open soon.